So hi, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Hayley Watts. I'm one of the Productivity Ninja team at Think Productive. I'm joined by my colleague Jess, who's part of our head office team, one of our Think Productive directors. So we're here to think about habits. This is the time of the year when often people start thinking about habits they want to make or break. Going to give you some thoughts and some tips around that, as well as an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have. So for now, I want you to close down your email, any other windows, anything else that you think is going to be a bit of a distraction for you. Somebody's already shared in the chat that they want to be less distracted by their phone. So if we turn it off, if we put it out of sight, that does make it a little bit easier to start focusing and ignoring it. At least for a bit of time anyway. Don't forget where you put it, you'll be looking around for it later. One of the habits I'm looking to create is always putting when I put my phone down in the house, putting it in the same place as my glasses, and they're always to be in the same place. I've now got a little dedicated slot. That's a new habit that I'm trying to create. I'll tell you more about that shortly. So the focus of our session today is creating long-lasting habits. We don't want to create habits that are going to do us really well up until about the 22nd of January, and then it's all out of the window. We're going to use the 4 Tendencies, which is a model by Gretchen Rubin to help us with creating some of these habits. And Gretchen's 4 Tendencies model comes from her book. I'm a licensee to deliver her 4 Tendencies training, so don't worry, we're not stealing Gretchen's ideas without her permission. But I found this stuff over the years really useful for myself in terms of creating habits for me, but also in terms of my interactions with other people and thinking about how they might go about creating habits. So the first thing I want you to think about in relation to habits we might want to create is, how do you respond to different expectations? Very often with New Year's resolutions, that's an inner expectation. It's something we're kind of expecting ourselves to do. It's something we create for ourselves. Whereas in the world of work or with our family and friends, there might be outer expectations, things other people want us to do, or rules of an organisation, policies, procedures, that kind of stuff. So recognising firstly that there's a difference there between those inner and those outer expectations. Hannah has a question or a comment. Hannah. I have a couple of raised hands there. Jess.
Yeah, Hannah said it was an accident.
Oh, I thought we were going to have a contribution off the bat. Okay, never mind. So thinking about, is the habit you're looking to create an inner or an outer expectation? That's going to make a difference to how we deal with that and interact with that for some of us. So I want to give you some examples of what I mean by that. So if you see this sign that says "Don't walk on the grass," that's an outer expectation. And I'm interested to know, I'm not going on the grass. I suspect Jess might be dancing on the grass. If you see this sign, you're out for a walk with a friend, quick show of hands, those of you who are either going on the grass or thinking about going on the grass. You can just use the hands up function. Oh, we've got quite a few of you, got more than 10% of you. Okay, quite a lot of people. Are 10–15% of people are looking to head off to the grass. Maybe they're going to do that, maybe they're not. They're a bit undecided. Whereas I'm like, I'm not going to go on the grass. I'll tell you why in a moment. For those of you who are thinking about going on the grass, if the sign was to say, please don't go on the grass, we've just planted some new seeds and they need a bit of space to grow, I suspect some of you would still be tempted to go on the grass. And others of you would be like, oh, okay, yeah, fine, I'll stay off the grass then. So we have a different response. And that response changes based on the signage and what we're being asked to do. So I just want you to hold in mind that thought. That's how you might respond to an external expectation. Some of you are following the rules and doing what the sign is asking you to. Some of you have some questions and you're not sure yet whether you're going to go on the grass or not because your questions haven't been answered. And some of you are kind of keen to get on the grass because the sign is telling you not to. So that's our outer expectations. I want us to spend a moment or two thinking about our inner expectations. So I've used the example here of vitamins. Being a productivity ninja, if I decide I'm going to take some vitamins, it goes on my shopping list, they get brought, quite good at that. Remembering to take them every day, not so good at that. That's an internal expectation. I'm less good at that. My partner, really good at that. Like, a decision is made, yes, going to buy these vitamins, going to take them every day, like brought into the health benefits of that, full understanding of why that might be a useful thing to do. The vitamins get taken every day. So I want you to think about something where you've created an inner expectation for yourself. Have you been able to meet that or not? And the chances are there'll be some examples where you have and some examples where you haven't. Just head to the chat for me and share with me what's the difference? What makes those inner expectations work for you?
I have my vitamins on my desk. I look at them every day and I still don't take them.
I've moved mine to my desk to make it more likely that I'll take them, because I've generally got a glass of water on my desk as well. So, but I wasn't very good at that. So I now set myself a little reminder on my second brain to do that. So, Jess, what's happening in the chat?
We've reminded Sarah to take their vitamins. Lots of comments about making it easy for ourselves can help, setting up reminders, making things visible, and routines. So creating routines. Yeah, so Vanessa said they're right next to their kettle. So going to be going there every day.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to look at things like, and this is quite a habit that, you know, you've got to have the vitamins, haven't you? They've got to physically be there. There's no point in remembering when you're on the train that you should have taken them earlier. So by pairing up a habit with an existing habit, so having things by the kettle or on your desk, you know you're going to be there on a regular basis. So if you kind of think, well, actually, when I make my morning cup of tea, I'll have my vitamins, so I'll keep them by the kettle. And then there'll probably be lots, if you're me, there's lots of other opportunities throughout the day if you forget. So pairing a new habit with an existing habit is a really good technique for most people to help them create new habits. Lots of people keep their vitamins by the kettle. This is news to me. This is cool. Okay, Lizzie's finding lots of reminders don't work because it's easy to ignore them. So Lizzie, hold on to that thought. We're going to kind of explore some of the 4 tendencies. And once we've identified which tendency you are, that will potentially help with that. Okay. Thank you for sharing your examples. Jess, if there's anything else there to pick up on, give me a shout. So Gretchen's 4 tendencies model, there are 4 types. And this is only looking at a very small aspect of personality. So sometimes people say, oh, you know, how does this relate to insights or the Myers-Briggs personality profile? It doesn't, because we're only looking at a very small aspect of how we work. So the first of these types is an upholder. So my upholder is really good at meeting outer expectations. Our upholder sees the sign that says don't go on the grass, and they're not going on the grass. They're really confused about the people who are thinking they might go on the grass. They don't understand this. Upholders are really good at following the rules. They are really good at doing the things that they agree to do because there's an outer expectation. They're also really good at inner expectations. These are the people who probably don't need to come to the webinar because they've already nailed habits. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. It's quite stressful being an upholder. Imagine committing to all the things you want to do and then following through and doing them. It's hard work. One of my very close friends is an upholder. And I think she finds other people who don't meet those outer expectations quite frustrating. It can be quite stressful for upholders to kind of be working with other people who are the other styles because they just don't quite understand. I think sometimes upholders can be seen as being a bit rigid, a bit inflexible, a bit difficult to engage with, and potentially not good at adopting new things if they're kind of sprung on them. Oh, we're changing the way we do this. And an upholder is probably the person who's going to be saying, oh, why do we need to change it? It's not broken. They tend to be quite judgmental sometimes of other tendencies, but they're great at following the rules. You know where you stand with an upholder, because if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. In terms of our world of work, they don't need an awful lot of close supervision. Okay, they're going to get things done. They embrace routine. Okay, if they're going to decide they're going to take vitamins, they're going to put them by the kettle, and they're going to do that first thing every morning, and it's just not an issue. Why are we even talking about it? They're less likely to become burnt out and overloaded. They're less likely to struggle with feeling overwhelmed, because they're very good at having boundaries in place, things that they know that are going to be useful for them. So that's our upholders. There are some, I've shared with you some of the things that's great about upholders and some of the things that's a bit more difficult or stressful about being an upholder. And I'm going to do that with each of the 4 tendencies. Then I'm going to ask you to think about which tendency you think might best describe you. The next one is a questioner, and you'll notice that the questioner and the upholder overlap. There might be different types of times or environments when our tendency, our natural tendency, kind of overlaps or interlinks with one of the others. So the questioner resists outer expectations. Our questioners are looking at that sign that says, don't go on the grass. And they're like, well, why not? Why? Somebody give me a reason. But when I shared that thing about, well, there's new seeds that have just been planted, the questioners might say, okay, well, that's a good enough reason for me. I understand now why I'm being asked not to go on the grass. So I'm kind of happy with that. So they resist those outer expectations unless they have quite a clear understanding of why they're being asked to do or to not do something. But they're really good at meeting their inner expectations. If they've decided they want to do something and they're brought into the reasons as to why they're going to do it. It's why my partner's been having a cold shower for 2 minutes every day, because he's read that this is really good for you and has lots of health benefits, which I'm sure it does, but it doesn't persuade me to go through something as uncomfortable and unpleasant as that, whereas he seems to think it's a great idea. That's because he's a questioner. Our next tendency is the obliger. Obligers are really good at meeting outer expectations. So they're not going on the grass. I wouldn't be going on the grass. I'm an obliger. But they resist inner expectations, which is why I struggle to take my vitamins, which is why I've put them on the desk. They're next to kind of the stuff that I use every day to make it more likely that I'm going to do that. The other thing is that I've just told you all, a few hundred people, that I'm going to try and take my vitamins every day. So even though some of you I'll never see again, it doesn't matter. I've told you I'm going to do it. So that makes it more likely to happen for me. About a year ago, I decided I was going to go to the gym twice a week to do an exercise class and swimming once a week. And I told everybody I knew, and many people I didn't know, that I was doing this. And that made for me it much more likely for that to happen. So I'm really good at meeting outer expectations, and I resist expectations I set for myself. So if I want to create a new habit, I try and make that expectation external, because I know I'm good at meeting those. This is our rebel. The rebels are the people who are like, it says I can't go on the grass, I'm off. I'm going to lie on the grass. I'm going to walk on the grass. I'm going to sit on the grass. I'm going to have a lovely time on the grass. Rebels tend to resist outer expectations, but they also resist some inner expectations. With rebels, the key is to identify, how does this relate to how the person sees themselves? How does it tap into their values? You can't tell a rebel what to do. Okay, that's really hard. So for our rebels, they have a high sense of, they put a large sense of value on freedom and the ability to choose. They're really good at thinking outside the box and coming up with different, unusual and creative ideas. They like roles where every day is different. You need to appeal to their identity of themselves to get them to do stuff. If you ask them to do something or tell them to do something, it's probably not going to happen. It's going to make it so much less likely that that thing is going to happen. My dad is a classic rebel. his doctor gave him some advice and said, you need to lose weight, you need to start eating healthily. The more people told him that he needed to do that, the more cake and donuts my dad was inclined to eat. It wasn't until about 2 years after everybody stopped nagging him to lose some weight that he actually got around to doing that, despite the kind of setbacks to his health that he was experiencing daily. If you're supervising somebody who's a rebel, then that needs to be quite loose. You don't want to be going in and telling them what to do. If you're a rebel and you're looking to create new habits, you can create them, you can not create them. It's entirely up to you. It's how it really relates to that sense of self. I think I kind of skipped over the obliger and the advantages and disadvantages of the obliger. So I'm just going to hop back to that. Obligers really high value on meeting external commitments. They'll go above and beyond. So if they're in kind of a customer service role, they want to please people in relation to creating new habits. They like the fact that other people might know what habits they're looking to create and are going to ask them about that. So if you're an obliger, ask people to ask you how your habits are going. Sometimes our obligers can start to feel a bit resentful that they're the person doing everything that they're being asked to do. In times of stress, or when they get to a point where they're like, actually, I've done enough obliging, they might be a bit rebellious for a short period of time. I did this with a group of friends. I organised us meeting up most weeks for a good few years. And then I went on holiday for about 6 weeks. They met up once while I was away. And then when our children started school, I said, actually, I'm not going to arrange for us to meet up every week. I'm just going to see what happens without me doing anything. And I think we've only met once since, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. So my little moment of obliger rebellion happened there. And I was like, no, enough. I'm going to stop organising these people. In terms of how we create our own habits, just being aware of what your tendency is. If you're a questioner, you really need to understand why you would be doing this. If you're not fully brought into the why, it's not going to happen. I don't know if we've got any questions around those 4 tendencies at this stage. There are a couple of questions, but not relating to the tendencies. So I'm going to come on to the questions that we've got there shortly. Jess, is there anything going on in the chat that is useful to look at the moment?
Eleanor does have their hand up. I don't know if that's another accident. Let us know, Eleanor, if you want to ask a question. But yeah, there's a lot of people identifying themselves in the chat, obligers. Cool. Some with moments of questioning and rebellion. I would say I'm an obliger who would like to be a questioner. I'm trying to train myself a little bit. I think my default is always to be an obliger, but I was walking the dog in Windsor Park the other day, and there was a big sign saying, put your dog on a lead. And I was like, why do I need to do that? I did in the end, but I kind of questioned it for a few moments. So we're asking you in the poll which tendency you are. Susanna's asked if there's any advantage to being a rebel.
Oh God, yeah.
Like a thankless place to be.
There's I'm going to read this quote from Gretchen's book about rebels, because I think for the other 3 tendencies, rebels can be a little bit tricky to understand sometimes, and their rebel nature. So I love this. So I'm going to read this bit from the book. A rebel on a mission is a force of nature, a superstar. No need for checklists, routines, rules, or habits to get things done. They need to find a cause, something to truly believe in and fight for. That's vital. The inner belief is so strong it will withstand any external pressure. A rebel believes in his or her own uniqueness and even superiority. There's certainly an aspect of arrogance, but if a rebel finds the cause, that's their master. And I love that. I think when you're thinking about messaging, what do you put in your newsletter that appeals to the rebels? That's kind of hard. But just remembering that rebel tendency is great, because there's so much freedom there. There's so much creativity. and that kind of, if you find the cause to engage the rebel in, then like they're going to fly, they're going to absolutely take off. So most of you are obligers. We've got a few rebels, we've got a few people who are unsure. That's fine, probably questioners, because you've got questions, haven't answered the questions for you yet. We're coming to that shortly. And we've got quite a few upholders as well. So there's no right or wrong with this. It's just kind of which one do you think you fall into most often. There is a quiz that you can do online if you're a bit unsure, but I think like your own inclination, what you think might relate to you is most likely to. Okay. So just going to get you to think about how you're going to apply to this to some of your goals. So what habit do you want to create? How might you apply this to your tendency? You might also want to start thinking about how you use this framework to work with people around you to encourage them to create new habits as well. So jot that down, that's your homework. Jess, should we look at any questions?
Yes, so a common question in the chat, which I think has come through on Q&A as well, is sort of how much overlap does there tend to be between the tendencies? Can you be all of them? Sort of how much of each of them can you be?
Yeah, I think, well, that varies. I think I tend to find my default is to be an obliger. I notice when I get stressed and overloaded, I might do a little bit of a rebellion short term or about a particular thing. I try to be a bit more of a questioner, and I think there's very little overlap between upholders and rebels. You know, they're kind of the opposite end. Those circles didn't overlap, but you can move between them. You'll probably find one is more dominant than the other. I do know somebody who I would have said was definitely upholder, like classic upholder person, somebody I used to work with. But then when I had this conversation with her about these 4 different tendencies, turns out she's a rebel. But she was like, I've decided to be like this at work. I've decided to follow the rules. I've decided I'm going to do that in my working world because that's how I'd like to be. That's what I think a good colleague does, a good teammate does, a good team player. But actually in my life outside of work, I'm the opposite. I'm very rebellious. So there is definitely some elements of overlap.
Could you just go back to the slide which has the homework question on? So just give everyone a couple more minutes for anyone who missed that.
Yeah, and if you want to share what that looks like for you in the chat, then I get excited about this stuff and would love to hear more about it.
Do you have any thoughts on how long you have to do something consistently for it to become a habit?
I've read a lot about this because I'm fascinated about habits. I think there's loads of different studies, aren't there? I mean, the numbers tend to range from something like 22 to 86, depending on which study you look at. And I think it's more complex than that. I think if you're an upholder, you're more likely to stick with it. It's going to be a much quicker habit to put into place. If you're a questioner and you haven't really got all the answers to your questions, it's not going to happen for you. If you're an obliger and there's no external accountability, again, that's harder. And rebels just kind of choose whether they want to or not. So I don't really think that there's a magic number. Habits are about, you know, what we do day in, day out repeatedly. So we can do things like pair existing habits with new habits, such as the vitamins by the kettle, such as the dental floss next to the toothbrush, such as, you know, filling the fridge with fruit and vegetables and making sure we don't buy any biscuits or chocolate. It's that kind of stuff, isn't it? So we can pair things up. We can also think about what we want to replace habits with. So a friend of mine gave up smoking a couple of years ago, and she said that when she was smoking, she tended to get in the car when she was driving somewhere, she'd light up a cigarette. She didn't smoke most of the time other than that. So she said what she did is she put some chewing gum in the car instead. So part of her kind of putting on her seatbelt, starting the car routine, she replaced the cigarettes with the chewing gum. And she said that kind of helped her. So thinking, well, what do we want to replace the habit with? So how do we pair things? How do we replace them? So if instead of eating chocolate, you want to eat salad, well, buy salad instead of chocolate. If you want to go to the gym, you know, having your bag packed so that if you're going to the gym after work, the bag is packed and it's ready to go. If you're an obliger, meeting somebody else at the gym is going to be helpful. If you're a questioner, reminding yourself of why it is that you want to go in the first place.
Yeah, I have two sisters and they're both quitting smoking at the moment, and one of them is getting a lot of satisfaction from letting us know another day's gone by and they haven't had a cigarette, and they have the app to say how much time's gone past, and the longer they do it, the more satisfaction they're getting. And then my other sister, she doesn't even want to quit smoking, but she's doing it anyway, so she's rebelling against herself before she even starts. And that's a bit harder.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a sister that's a rebel and a sister that's an obliger.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you give some examples of how knowing the tendencies of your teammates can help at work, or how it might help, you know, when you're writing email campaigns or, you know, things like that?
Excellent question. So yeah, if you know what the tendency is of the person that you're working with, you can tailor your messages to them. So if you're working with an obliger, you know, okay, can you get this done for me? What do you need? What help do you need? Asking and checking in with them regularly to see how that's going, keeping it forefront of their mind, reminding them of that external accountability. If they're a rebel or a questioner, that approach is really going to turn them off. So if it's a questioner, just being really clear on what they're being asked to do, but why they're being asked to do it. And giving them an opportunity to ask questions. There's probably somebody on the team who asks lots of questions, and it'll be like, you know, you're in the team meeting, you kind of think, oh, we're about done here, we're ready to finish the meeting early. And then the questioner comes up with lots of questions. But that can stop us wasting time on stuff and going off on the wrong direction. They're quite creative. They help us to really think things through and come to the right conclusions. So in a team, you ideally want to have all of these kind of characteristics and tendencies. So if you can identify, if you've got questioners on the team, you need to leave plenty of time and opportunity for them to ask questions, so that they can understand what they're engaging in and why they're doing it. Upholders, you're probably going to recognize your upholders quite easily, because yeah, they follow the rules. If they say they're going to finish work at 5, they finish work at 5. They're quite good on those boundaries. Does that help? And in relation to the email kind of campaigns, newsletters, that kind of stuff, where you're going to be writing something that's going to be read by all 4 tendencies, you need to have a few things in there that are going to appeal to everybody. So I always use my dentist as the example of this. He says, you know, you need to floss your teeth. You need to floss your teeth because it will make them last longer. They'll be healthier. I'm going to ask you next time how you're getting on with that. So that's for the obligers. And then he always finishes it off by saying, it's up to you. They're your teeth. Floss them, don't floss them. I don't mind. And that kind of appeals to the rebels. And my partner still had questions. He was like, well, I'm 40 something years old. I've not had any problems with my teeth and I haven't been flossing them every day. What's the issue? I was like, yeah, but back in the day, like, we were considered to be elderly. Most people didn't live to 40, 50. Their teeth certainly didn't last that long. So if you want them to last longer, you need to floss. So he now flosses every day. So just thinking about how you write something that appeals to all of them.
Yeah, as a rebel, I notice in my communications when, you know, a colleague recognises I'm a rebel, because I'll say, you could do this or not, it's up to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of rebels, there's a question, do you have any sort of ideas on how to motivate a rebel who's part of the team to complete their tasks in time?
I think for rebels, it's around identifying they're going to do what they want to do. You can't make a rebel do something. You can tie into their sense of their self-identity. I've been in a meeting room before where I've seen a sign on the wall that said something along the lines of "professionals tidy up after themselves." And I thought that was kind of, the upholders and the obligers are going to do that anyway. The questioners are probably see the advantage of keeping the meeting room tidy. A sign that says "put your things away when you leave the room" is going to turn a rebel right off. It's going to make them want to leave their stuff behind. So I thought that was quite a nice, fun way of doing that. And I've seen some brilliant signage at King's Cross train station. There's a sign by the escalators with a picture of a guy lying in bed with his arm in plaster and his leg up in traction. And it said "Fred played on the escalators, don't be like Fred." And I was like, that's cool, because like most of the other tendencies aren't going to be playing on the escalators. But it was something that I thought really appealed to the rebels and just made everybody smile.
Have you tried any of the apps to help motivate you with habits? Have any worked for you?
Yeah, there was something right at the beginning. Michaela shared that there was a desire there to not be distracted by the mobile phone. So one of the apps you can use to help with that is Forest. It grows a little picture of a tree while you're not using your phone. If you pick up your phone and start using it before your timer ends, your tree wilts and dies, and that's sad. Nobody wants that to happen. So that, again, I guess it creates a little bit of external accountability, but it's just kind of a bit of fun. When you fill up your forest with trees, the developers of the app plant a tree in the real world. So there's a consequence then. So that maybe ties into the questioners more. There is a 4 Tendencies app that you can use to help track your habits. That's another good way for the obligers. I don't know that it would work for the other tendencies, to be honest.
Carol's asked, as a creator, how can we learn prompts or questions that appeal to each tendency? Do you have a resource to recommend, or does Gretchen's book cover this?
Yeah, the book covers quite a lot of that. It probably doesn't give you a toolkit as such, and it will depend very much on who you're appealing to and what action you're trying to incite. I think just remembering what works for an upholder, like telling them what to do, doesn't work for the rebel. So if you can appeal to the rebel, you can probably appeal to most people. There needs to be something in there for the obligers, for the accountability, and the reasoning, the logic behind why you're asking somebody to do something for the questioners. Elena shared something in the chat there around the importance of checking in with obligers when you're asking them to do something, capacity wise, making sure that they have the skills and the confidence to say no, because that's something that I think obligers find incredibly difficult.
Sasha's asked, how can knowing my tendency help me?
Well, it depends on what your tendency is, I guess. I think if you're an upholder, just being aware that not everybody works in the same way, the same style as you do. The obligers and the questioners are probably the most common tendencies. So for the upholder to be kind of aware that there are differences. If you're a questioner, knowing that if you keep asking questions, it will help you to form new habits if you decide that it's a habit that's worthy of your energy and your attention. So questioners are probably quite good already at finding reasons for things, doing the research. I think questioners can also sometimes struggle with decision paralysis, because they're like, there's more information out there, I need to learn more about it, I haven't got all of the answers yet. So just kind of being aware of that and saying, actually, I've got enough information to make a decision as to whether this is going to be helpful to me or not. For obligers, obviously, it's the external accountability.
A great question here from Susanna. How can upholders and rebels coexist and function when they don't have common ground?
That's a great question. I don't know that I have a simple answer for that one. I think it's about tapping into your values. It's about recognizing actually we're all different. Wouldn't it be really boring if we were all the same? I think it would be great to be an upholder, but like if we were all upholders, that just wouldn't work. So perhaps being a bit patient, a bit of trust that person is doing their best, and their style is different. It doesn't mean that it's wrong or it's bad.
Do you think your tendency is innate, or can you work on becoming more like another tendency?
I think it's innate, and that's certainly Gretchen's point of view as well. But you can try to learn to be a bit more of some of the other tendencies, but noticing, I guess, there are times where you just kind of go back to your default. So I try to be a bit more questioning, because I'd like to be a questioner. I think that sounds cool. Asking intelligent questions. I'm interested in coaching and facilitation. That's all about asking people good questions. So I think you can have a go at learning others, but I think there is an element of innateness there. I saw something there. Somebody was, I can't see who it was. Sasha, falling down on inner expectations, keep trying to improve diet and fitness, but don't keep up, and it makes me feel sad. Like that's sad to hear, and I can relate to that because it's something I struggled with hugely, that exercise thing. So thinking what opportunities are there to make that accountability external. Just telling your partner or your family or your friends might not be enough. Maybe meeting somebody else at the gym. When I first started doing my 3 times a week exercise, I had made a deal with a friend of mine. I said, look, if I do this for 6 months, we'll have a spa day. So I kind of felt if I didn't do it, we wouldn't get to go on our spa day, and I would miss out, but my friend would miss out too. So that made me go and do it, and that kind of got me into the routine of doing it. So stick with it, Sasha. Let me know how you get on. As a rebel, working with an upholder can be positive. Upholders can support the rebels to get routine things done. Thank you, Kim. That's great. There's a kind of an exchange there, isn't there? The upholders like routine and doing kind of maybe the same things at the same times, and the rebels hate that. So there could be some sharing and exchange of tasks that could work really neatly. What else do we have in the way of questions?
Dennis has asked, is there a link between habit prioritization and a particular tendency? For example, obliger may drop what they're working on for a new activity or a new person. An upholder may struggle to decide between an inner and an outer priority.
Yeah, definitely. and that's exactly the challenge. You've summed that up really neatly there. What was the question?
I've closed it now. Is there a link between habit prioritization and a particular tendency?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the upholders will probably find that prioritization a bit easier. Unless they're being asked to do lots of things at once, and being told, these are all urgent. They're going to be looking for somebody external perhaps to help them with that, and the rebel might be a good person because they're less into that. Let's not do it because we've always done it, or this is how it's always worked. And again, with the obligers, creating that external accountability. So just saying to somebody, okay, what's your priority for today? Jess, I know that you do that in the Think Productive team in the daily huddle, kind of talking about priorities for the day. So just giving people an opportunity to express that to others can really help. I love Simon's comment about fixed versus growth mindsets. Really into the whole kind of growth mindset stuff. There's a comment there about the person who said they were feeling sad and not doing the exercise. There's always room for improvement and development. Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say that obligers, upholders and rebels don't ask questions. Well, of course they do. It's probably just that the questioners have more questions, and will be the difference between them taking action and creating a new habit and them not doing that. So I was asking, can obligers protect themselves from being taken advantage of? Yes, I think being aware of it is the first thing. When I used to manage a team of people, I had somebody who I think she was probably a questioner actually, but I would say to her, can you do this for me? And the answer would be, no. Oh, okay, but I really need you to do this. So I learned fairly quickly that instead of saying, can you do this for me? It was like, right, this needs doing. You're the best person for the job. What's not going to happen if this gets done? So then we started interacting into a conversation about the trade-off rather than just kind of piling more work on. And I think that's a good technique to use really with any of the tendencies. I think obligers can say when they're being asked to do something else and adding more work to the load, can I come back to you on that? Can I review what I've got on at the moment? Can I have a conversation with my line manager about the priorities? That's kind of partly what the line management structure is there for. So let's use it in that way. I love that. Kim sharing the rebel can encourage the upholders to step outside of their routines, but it doesn't mean they're going to want to. So just kind of being cautious if you're a rebel working with an upholder. They're not always going to necessarily welcome that invitation to do things differently. Maybe if that's a conclusion you come to together, then that might be better. We've got a few more minutes left. I'm just flicking through the chat to see if there are any questions that we haven't answered or any kind of habits people wanted to create that we haven't touched on. Somebody there who would love an empty inbox, you need to attend my colleague Grace's session tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. Somebody's asking there to see the Venn diagram again. So if you want to take a quick screenshot of that, feel free to do so. You'll notice the upholder and the rebel don't overlap. The rest of them, there's some overlap. So before you all disappear, we're almost done. It might be that you want to find out a bit more about what we do. We have a few more free webinars coming up over the next few months. We've got making hybrid, I can't speak, hybrid working, making hybrid working really work. And that's in February. We've got our human, not superhero, which is one of our values at Think Productive and something that we're all very passionate about. We're human beings, we're not robots. So how do we embrace that and use that? So there are upcoming free webinars. We've got some public workshops. We've got our email survival guide. That's happening tomorrow with my colleague Grace. Same time, same place, I believe. And we've got our project management 101 on the 1st of February. So that's not too far away. Towards the end of February, I'm going to be running our 6-week to Ninja course. So this is a public workshop. It starts on the 23rd of February. It's 2 hours a week for 6 weeks. And we're going to cover loads of stuff around productivity, around well-being, dealing with your overwhelming to-do lists, dealing with your email, getting everything under control. So this session or these sessions are for people who've got too much work, not enough time to get the work done in, and want to bring some clarity, some focus, and just confidence that whatever you're working on at that point in time is the right thing to be giving your energy and your attention to. So for our public workshops, we're giving you 10% off because you're here joining us on our free webinar. So you can book online and use the code webinar for your 10% discount on any of those sessions. So that's the email survival guide, the project management, and the 6 weeks to Ninja. We do a whole load of other stuff. We do have a session called We Need to Talk, which is for those tricky, sticky conversations that you might need to have in the workplace. We've got Unlocking Your Emotional Intelligence, as well as a whole load of leadership and management programs for different levels. And these are 14-week programs that take you on a journey and support you all the way through with a mixture of training, coaching, group support to really help you wherever you are at in terms of your leadership and your management journeys. Be lovely to keep in touch with you. I'm just going to share my contact details in the chat as well. And there's a QR code there. So if you want to stay in touch, you can use the QR code put my contact details straight into your phone, and then I'm on speed dial, and you've got a productivity ninja to help you out. LinkedIn is probably the best way to keep in touch. Thank you all very much. I will stick around in case people have got further questions, but otherwise, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Hayley. We have a question from Heather. How can I help myself to stick to my plans when I feel overwhelmed as an obliger? Would you suggest getting others to help prioritise with you or for you?
Yeah, definitely. Having that kind of conversation out loud to help with those priorities. But also recognising, like, if you're going to take on one thing, something else needs to go. Don't just keep adding things to the pile. The pile needs to stay the same size. So we can put some things on the back burner and say, okay, we're going to put that to one side and focus on this other thing over here. Thank you for all your thank yous. Just scrolling through to see if there's any questions. If you have got any questions, please head to the Q&A section so we can pull those out. We'll stick around and answer these. Jenny has a question about the recording. The recording will be available on the YouTube channel, Jess, is that right?
Yes, yeah. We have a question here. How can I motivate myself as a rebel to create a habit long term?
Jess, have you got any thoughts?
I do struggle with this
Yeah.
because I'll decide that I want a habit, and I'll be very confident when I've decided that I'm going to do it, that I will do it. And then just as quickly I can decide I don't want to do that anymore, so I'm not going to do it. I do spend time thinking about, like, the future me that will be happy that I did stick to it, and it's uncomfortable. It's not easy, I think, as a rebel to stick to it, because you just want to go against yourself all the time. But yeah, I think about the person in the future version of me who will be happy that I did stick to it, or feel proud, or kind of a bit of validation, like externally, or how I might feel when I do achieve that. And I like to prove people wrong. I don't know if that's like rebellious as well. So I'm like, oh, when people think I couldn't do this, the best thing is for someone to tell me that I can't do it, then I will do it. So I need someone to say, you will never take your vitamins every day. There's just no way. And then I will do it.
Okay, that's a great tip. So that's kind of, I guess, it's a bit like the reverse psychology of the obliger.
Yeah.
So some external disbelief. Lovely, thank you. And I guess also it might help to just make it easy. You know, that person is saying they're struggling to go to the gym, just thinking about what can you do to make that a bit easier. Cool. Thanks very much. Doesn't look like we've got any other questions, so shall we end things there?
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Hayley. Thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Hope to see you again soon.
Bye.